The faint crackle of an intercom carried over the hum of an airport terminal. Final boarding for Atlantic Air Flight 207. Travelers rushed in every direction, dragging luggage and fatigue behind them. Among them, a woman in a tailored white blazer checked her boarding pass and sighed aloud. Victoria Reed, mid-40s, platinum hair in a precise bun, was a broker of business and ego. She hated waiting, hated noise, and hated people who ignored her importance. Before you scroll, stop right here. Imagine a powerful black woman stepping onto a plane, only to be told the seat she chose doesn't belong to her. What happens next will flip arrogance into awe and leave you speechless when the truth takes off at 30,000 feet. Hit subscribe now so you never miss stories that prove dignity always wins, no matter how turbulent the flight gets. Tap the bell to stay part of a community built on courage and change, and tell us in the comments which country you're watching from, because respect knows no borders, and we love seeing how far these stories can travel around the world. When she reached the gate, only one seat remained open in the first-class lounge. In it sat a woman in a simple navy dress, earbuds in, posture graceful. Victoria's brows pinched. "Excuse me," she announced, voice edged with entitlement. "That's my seat." The other woman looked up, removing an earbud. Ava Johnson, a tall black woman with soft brown skin and calm eyes, glanced at the empty lounge around them, then back at the stranger. "I don't think so," she said politely. This seat wasn't marked reserved. Victoria tapped her designer heel impatiently. "This lounge is for executive members and platinum card holders. You must have overlooked the section sign." Her tone dripped with condescension disguised as etiquette. Some passengers glanced up, sensing that tension thickening like bad weather. Ava regarded her calmly. "I know exactly where I am," she said. Victoria gave a thin smile meant to cut. "I'm sure you do. But maybe next time, sweetie. Check the sign before getting comfortable." Ava's lips curved into something between amusement and disbelief. She unplugged her earbuds, stood and gestured toward the chair. "If the seat defines you that much, please take it." Satisfied victory flitted across Victoria's features. She sat down, smoothing the white fabric over her knees, like a queen reclaiming a throne. "Don't take it personally," she said, waving a manicured hand. "Some rules are for people who earn them, some aren't." Ava's expression never changed. "You're right," she said softly. "Some rules are overdue for revision." Moments later, boarding began. As first class was called, Victoria strutted forward, scanning the crowd to ensure the other woman faded out behind. But to her irritation, Ava presented her boarding pass to the attendant at the same time. The hostess smiled widely. "Good evening, Miss Johnson. We've prepared your suite." "The crew is ready whenever you are." Victoria froze. "Miss Johnson, suite?" For a flash, confusion replaced her practiced confidence. When Ava nodded and stepped down the jet bridge, poised as sunrise, something in Victoria's stomach twisted. She brushed it off, probably some influencer with airline points. Wealth didn't impress Victoria, only authority. Yet as she took her first-class seat, sipping champagne and rehearsing her presentation notes, she couldn't shake the image of that woman's unbothered composure. The safety lights dimmed. Cabin music softened to piano. Victoria sighed, finally in her rightful atmosphere. Then the captain's voice came through the speakers, warm, female, clear. "Good evening, passengers. This is your captain, Ava Johnson. Welcome aboard." For the first time in years, Victoria forgot to smile. The stem of Victoria's glass clinked softly against the tray table as her hand trembled. Around her, polite applause rippled through the cabin at the sound of the captain's greeting. First-class passengers exchanged casual smiles, oblivious to the freeze sliding down her spine. She stared straight ahead, champagne losing its sparkle. "That can't be the same woman," she thought. "It's impossible." The voice continued warmly through the intercom. "Our flight time from New York to London will be 6 hours and 10 minutes. Sit back, relax, and allow my crew and me to take care of you." Then a slight pause, almost playful. "And for those who still believe appearances can be deceiving, I promise they usually are." The cabin chuckled. Victoria felt as if the words were aimed directly at her. When the seatbelt sign flicked off, a flight attendant leaned over with professional grace. "Would you like to meet the captain after takeoff, Ms. Reed?" "Captain Johnson asked me to check with you once we're in the air." Victoria blinked. She asked for me?" "Yes, ma'am." The attendant smiled pleasantly, missing the tension coiling beneath that white blazer. She said she met you in the lounge. Victoria swallowed a denial that stuck to her tongue. Tell her I'm occupied. Her voice broke halfway, betraying nerves she didn't recognize. For the next hour, she tried to focus on her slides, profit forecasts, merger percentages, but every number blurred into one unanswered question. How could a black woman captain one of the most elite intercontinental flights in the world? And how had I, Victoria Reed of all people, spoken down to her like she was staff? Somewhere past Ireland, turbulence hummed gently and guilt twisted sharper. She pushed her call button, whispering an excuse for water she didn't need, as though service could drown the quiet of her own prejudice. Outside the window, clouds stretched silver under moonlight, beautiful, weightless, equal. For the first time that night, she envied them. When the plane finally leveled again, the cockpit door opened briefly, revealing the captain's crisp navy uniform, epaulettes gleaming. Ava Johnson stepped into the aisle to greet her passengers, custom for long routes. Heads turned, smiles lit, cameras discreetly lifted. She was elegance translated into control. Tall, calm, skin glowing under cabin light, confidence and aura no diamond could mimic. Victoria's throat went dry when Ava stopped by her row. "Ms. Reed," the captain said with that same composed tone, "I hope you're comfortable." Every conversation within 5 seats fell silent. Victoria forced a half smile. "Quite," she murmured. Ava nodded thoughtfully. "I wanted to thank you personally for reminding me how much representation still matters. There's always room in first class for change." A wave of uneasy laughter moved through the section. Crap. Her words were gracious, but the subtext struck harder than turbulence. Victoria stammered, Look, about that seat, Ava cut in gently. "It's all right. You were protecting what you valued. We just happened to value different things." Then, with effortless authority, she turned to the others. "Enjoy the rest of your flight." She glided down the aisle, conversations reigniting behind her like jet fuel. For the remaining hours, Victoria sat rigid, the cabin colder for it. When they landed in London, she stayed seated till last, pretending to scroll her phone. Passengers exited to the sound of thank yous and farewell smiles from Captain Johnson herself. Eventually, Victoria collected her bag and walked out, trying to reassemble arrogance over shattered embarrassment. But fate wasn't finished. At customs, her mobile pinged with a notification, "Thank you for flying with Skyrise Group." She frowned. Skyrise, parent company of Atlantic Air. Beneath the message flashed, CEO, Ava Johnson. Her heart stopped. Captain Johnson wasn't just a pilot. She owned the skies she flew. Hours later, at a business conference welcome dinner, new whispers spread down the hallway. "Everyone, please welcome key investor and airline founder, CEO Ava Johnson." The applause was thunderous. Victoria couldn't breathe as the same calm woman from the flight stepped onto the stage, in a midnight blue suit fit for royalty. Ava scanned the room. Their eyes met like déjà vu under brighter gravity. Then, smiling with zero bitterness, she began, "Leadership isn't about where you sit. It's about what you lift. Tonight I want to talk about that." And in the crowd, Victoria Reed, self-made broker of power, felt herself shrink to human scale. For the first time, she listened. After the applause thinned into murmurs, Ava continued from the podium, speaking with a slow rhythm that commanded attention. "A few hours ago," she said, "someone reminded me that power still carries an image. It's often wrapped in expectations. Gender, appearance, color. We inherit those expectations, then spend our lives either defending them or disproving them." A ripple of nods moved through the room, but stories don't move forward until someone chooses the harder path, proving what can't yet be imagined. Every word felt like it hovered between truth and confession, and though no one else in that elegant ballroom could trace its edges, Victoria knew the story behind it, knew who was being referenced beneath the calm delivery. Her chest tightened with a heat that wasn't quite shame, yet had no other name. When Ava finished, cameras flashed. Investors hurried forward, eager to shake her hand. Victoria stood near the back, pulling at the hem of her blazer, as though she could shrink from her own privilege. Yet curiosity tugged stronger than humiliation. Watching Ava laugh easily with financiers and innovators, she wondered how someone she had dismissed so quickly could exude such quiet command, a grace unforced and free of resentment. She envied it more than she wanted to admit. A few moments later, assistants began shifting through the crowd with invitations for the next morning's leadership breakfast. When one reached Victoria, she hesitated. "This event includes direct mentorship panels under the CEO," the young woman said brightly. "You should definitely attend, ma'am." I might," Victoria replied weakly, sliding the envelope into her purse like evidence. That night, alone in her 5-star hotel suite overlooking the Thames, she couldn't sleep. Luxury usually felt like validation, but not tonight. Everywhere she looked, the gleaming marble, the chilled bottle of champagne, the scene mocked her blindness. She thought about her daughter at home, 12 years old, intelligent and kind. What would she learn from her mother if all she saw was arrogance mixed with cowardice? By dawn, the decision materialized. She would go to that breakfast, not to fix optics, but to apologize, though even that word felt too small to carry what she needed to say. The next morning, sunlight filled the conference room where oatmeal and espresso replaced extravagance. Ava arrived last, wearing a crisp white blouse and plum-colored suit, hair pulled back tighter than the night before. She didn't notice Victoria at first. She was too busy greeting attendees. When she finally turned and their eyes met, a brief silence tethered them again. "I wasn't sure you'd come," Ava said quietly as she approached. Victoria rose from her chair. "Neither was I." The group around them continued chatting, but the air between the two women thinned until every second felt longer than etiquette allowed. Finally, Victoria spoke, voice trembling. "I was rude to you. Worse than rude, I was ignorant. You didn't deserve it. You probably hear this often, but you represent something I didn't know how to respect." Ava's expression didn't harden, it softened. "Respect isn't owed to representation. It's owed to people." The simplicity disarmed her. "You could publicly humiliate me right now, and I'd deserve it," Victoria whispered. "I don't believe in lessons built on shame," Ava replied. "You learned yours faster than most." She gestured toward an open seat beside her. "Sit. You might as well eat while reconciling." Victoria exhaled through relief that felt dangerously like gratitude. "Do you ever get tired of being magnanimous?" "When I do," Ava smiled faintly, "I remember who once denied me a seat and who gave one later. Balance, not bitterness." They sat together as the talk shifted toward mentorship, diversity, and leadership ethics. Where Victoria expected corporate jargon, Ava spoke about human empathy as infrastructure, outlining programs to provide pilot scholarships for minority youth. "The sky is open by design," she said to the group. "It's people who build ceilings." The room erupted in applause after her final remarks. As everyone stood, Victoria lingered. "If you ever want an investor who genuinely understands humility, call me," she said, half joking. Ava's brow lifted. "I thought humility rarely invests." Victoria laughed for the first time in days. Maybe it just needed new management. Later, as attendees filtered out, Victoria walked ahead toward the foyer, phone buzzing with unread messages. A dull voice inside, the old one, the one that measured status in access, whispered to reclaim the comfort of superiority. But a stronger voice, forged overnight, countered, "No, we grow in discomfort." Just before boarding her return flight that evening, Victoria stopped at an airport gift shop, buying a small model plane with the Skyrise logo on its tail. When the gate agent called for boarding, she took her place in line behind others, waiting patiently. Through the terminal glass, she caught sight of Captain Johnson again, waving politely to a child peering through from the gate window. The captain bent down, adjusting the girl's toy wings, then looked up and saw Victoria observing. For a quiet moment they exchanged a nod, not forgiveness offered or taken, but mutual acknowledgement that two very different skies could now share the same horizon. Back in New York, the city's rhythm swallowed Victoria Reed again. The taxis, the skyscrapers, the colleagues who measured worth in billable hours. Yet something in her pace had slowed. It wasn't hesitation, it was awareness. Every elevator ride, every meeting filled with monochrome suits, hinted at what she'd witnessed. Grace without wealth flaunted, authority without arrogance. 3 days after her return, she received an embossed envelope sealed with the Skyrise insignia. It contained a note handwritten in clean loops. "Ms. Reed, I appreciated our conversation in London. You struck me as someone who knows how to change her mind. We're hosting a youth aviation fundraiser this weekend. Consider attending, if only to listen. Signed simply, Ava Johnson. Victoria reread it twice before setting it on her desk. No public apology had been requested. No transaction proposed. The simplicity again dismantled her defenses. On Saturday evening, she arrived at the hangar-turned-event hall on the Hudson. Purple and amber light washed the walls, a color gradient borrowed straight from sunset. Suspended overhead were airplane fuselages cut cross-section, decorated with photographs of young scholarship recipients, faces of every color smiling inside cockpits. Ava stood near the stage, wearing a black satin jacket embroidered with silver wings. When she saw Victoria, her surprise brightened into acceptance rather than politeness. "You came," she said, "and on a weekend." Victoria chuckled softly. "I figured the sky owes me another lesson. Then let me show you what humility funds." Ava guided her toward a table where 3 teenagers described their first solo flights, under the Foundation's mentorship. One boy, a shy Latino kid named Luis, said quietly, "We used to live near a runway. People told me pilots don't come from my neighborhood. But Ms. Johnson said that's where pilots should come from." Victoria's throat tightened. "How old are you?" 17, he answered, smiling wide. "Next week I fly commercial training legs over Lake Michigan." The investors around the table applauded, but for Victoria the sound blurred behind the heartbeat in her ears. She excused herself to the balcony, needing air. The river below shimmered like obsidian wrapped in gold reflections. Ava joined her a few minutes later, resting arms on the railing. "Still allergic to inspiration?" she teased. Victoria shook her head. "Just processing scale. You turned discrimination into flight paths." Ava smiled faintly. "We all board the same gravity. I just decide not to stay parked." Silence stretched, comfortable now. Then Victoria confessed something she hadn't told another soul. "When I first saw you in that lounge, I thought you didn't belong there. Not because of you, but because of everything I was taught to equate with belonging. It was ugly, and it was reflex. I can't unthink it, but I can outlive it." Ava's gaze softened in the glow of runway lights flickering distant red. "That's the most useful kind of turbulence, internal. Without it, no one learns new altitude." For a moment, laughter eased the tension from both, and then Ava extended her hand. "In that case, Ms. Reed, welcome formally to first class in humanity. No membership required." Victoria clasped it, feeling something less like absolution and more like solidarity. Around them, jets idled softly on taxiways, engines humming deeper truths about motion and noise. Later, as guests drifted toward the parking lot, Ava took the microphone for closing remarks. "Before we end," she said, "I want to acknowledge someone who reminds us that people can change faster than institutions. Ms. Reed, thank you for showing up again tonight." Dozens of heads turned. Victoria's first instinct was retreat. Yet this time the spotlight felt lighter. She rose, accepting applause that didn't mock mistake, but celebrated metamorphosis. She caught Ava's approving nod from across the room, a signal that redemption, not embarrassment, had been intended. When the crowd dispersed, Victoria found herself walking toward an empty tarmac beyond security lights. It smelled of rain and jet fuel, that odd blend of earth and ambition. She could almost hear the echo of Ava's earlier phrase, "We all board the same gravity." She glanced upward. Planes climbed silently through layers of midnight, heading for unseen destinations, each framed by the same round window of sky. And she finally viscerally understood what Ava Johnson had meant about ceilings being man-made. Back in her car, Victoria texted her daughter a photo of the hangar. "Remind me to take you flying soon," she wrote. Within seconds, the reply came, bright and curious. "You know how to fly?" Victoria smiled. "Not yet, but someone taught me where to start." The next morning, she filled out a donation pledge to the Skyrise Youth Program, but she also drafted a memo for her own firm, implementing a mentorship initiative for underrepresented interns. The proposal read simply, "Because the future has better pilots than prejudice ever did." By afternoon, she hit send, realizing it marked the first email of her career that felt lighter than profit margins. Somewhere thousands of feet above, a plane banked eastward toward the sun. In its cockpit, Captain Ava Johnson adjusted altitude, eyes catching the horizon. 2 names flickered briefly in her communication log. Familiar, intersecting worlds now moving on parallel courses. She smiled to herself as the radio crackled. Maintain present heading. She already was. Months rolled by. And the world kept circling through its ordinary injustices. Flight delays, boardroom meetings, and people still assuming the wrong things about those beside them. But now, whenever a skyrise plane cut across the morning light, Victoria Reed looked up and remembered a different lesson about altitude. She'd traded arrogance for awareness, and life suddenly sounded clearer in her own head. She began flying regularly, not private charters, but real flights with crowded gates, noisy families, and crew members, carrying the long patience of service work. She greeted them by name, thanked them sincerely, and when she found herself in first class, she offered her seat to whoever looked most exhausted. A few passengers took notice, but she wasn't doing it for eyes. She was doing it for equilibrium. One afternoon, she boarded a skyrise flight to Chicago for a major global finance summit. As fate liked to prove, the announcement came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain, Ava Johnson. We have clear skies ahead." Victoria smiled. Coincidence had turned into tradition. The flight attendant recognized her and passed along a note written in the curved handwriting she knew well. "Always remember, leadership is a seat everyone gets to earn." It made her grin right there between two strangers eating pretzels. At the summit, she delivered a talk titled "The Price of Perspective." No slides, no self-promotion, just a small personal story about a lounge seat that turned into a mirror. "I mistook power for privilege and humility for weakness," she told executives from around the world. "Then I met a woman who owned both a jet and her peace of mind. Turned out she flew higher because she never needed to look down." Silence followed, the respectful kind that doesn't come from politeness, but recognition. When she stepped down, younger professionals she didn't know approached to thank her for honesty. For once, she walked away lighter rather than larger. A few days later, Victoria visited a classroom funded by the Skyrise Youth Program. Models of airplanes hung from the ceiling, spinning slowly in air-conditioning drafts. Children of every shade clustered around simulators, showing a bright blue horizon. And there in the corner was Ava Johnson herself, wearing a simple navy flight jacket. When she saw Victoria at the door, her smile folded into pure welcome. "You keep showing up," Ava said, shaking her head. "And you keep flying," Victoria replied. They both laughed. "We've expanded to 12 countries," Ava added. "Half of these kids have never even been on a plane before today." Victoria looked around at the mosaic of young faces. "They'll rewrite every stereotype we ever inherited." "That's the plan," Ava said lightly. The bell rang for recess, and the room erupted with laughter. One girl darted up to them holding a drawing, 2 planes crossing paths in the sky. She handed it to them proudly. "They're friends," the child said, "even though they go different ways." Ava crouched down. "That's a perfect story," she said. Victoria traced the crayon horizon with her finger, eyes misting. "Keep it up there, kid," she whispered. "Never let anyone tell you where you don't belong." That evening, as she rode home under a lavender sunset, she took the drawing from her bag. In the last light of day, it looked almost alive. 2 jet silhouettes glowing against orange clouds, their contrails forming the shape of an open door. She taped it to her wall above her desk, beside a small nameplate she'd kept from her firm, the one she'd stopped polishing since that night at the lounge. It looked different now, smaller, harmless. Outside, another plane roared across the darkening sky. She lifted her coffee in a quiet toast toward invisible wings. Somewhere up there, without needing to say it, 2 women flew the same direction, one in the cockpit, one in a life finally wide enough for everyone.